She told me not to drink it, but my entire family was watching. And the woman who gave it to me
was smiling like she already knew what I'd do. My name is Robert Hale. I'm 62 years old, and I built everything I have with my own hands.
The kind of life where people shake your hand a little tighter when they hear your name. The kind of life where your opinion carries weight in a room full of powerful people. But none of that mattered in that moment, because my hand was trembling over a simple cup of coffee. It was supposed to be a normal morning. The kind of morning that decides the future of a family. We were gathered in the dining room of my house. Not just a house, a place I spent 30 years building brick by brick, decision by decision. My son Daniel sat across from me, perfectly composed, dressed sharp like always. Beside him was his wife, Emily, the woman who had walked into our lives 3 years ago and quietly changed everything. And standing near the corner, barely noticeable unless you paid attention, was Martha, our housemaid for over 15 years. She had never once interfered in family matters. Until today. Emily walked in carrying a tray. Her movements were calm, controlled, almost graceful. She had this way of commanding attention without saying a word. Everyone looked up as she approached the table. "Coffee for everyone," she said softly. Her voice was sweet, but something about it felt rehearsed. She handed Daniel his cup first. Then my daughter Sarah. Then me. When she reached me, she paused just slightly. Just enough for me to notice. Her eyes met mine and she smiled. It wasn't warm. It wasn't loving. It was expectant. Like she was waiting. I took the cup. And that's when I heard it. A whisper. Low. Urgent. Almost shaking. "Don't drink it, trust me." I didn't turn immediately. But I knew that voice. Martha. My grip tightened around the cup. The room felt different suddenly. Heavier. Like something invisible had just stepped inside and was standing right behind me. I slowly turned my head. Martha was near the doorway, pretending to adjust the curtains. But her eyes were locked onto mine, and she gave the smallest shake of her head. No. My heartbeat picked up. This didn't make sense. Martha wasn't dramatic. She wasn't someone who interfered. If she said something like that, it meant something was very, very wrong. But across the table, Emily was still watching me, smiling, waiting. "Dad," Daniel said. "You okay?" I realized I hadn't moved. The cup was still hovering inches from my lips. Everyone was watching now. This wasn't just a family breakfast. This was a meeting. A decision day. Papers were sitting right there on the table. Documents that would transfer partial control of my company to Daniel. Something he had been pushing for. Something Emily had been encouraging. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Just thinking." I lowered the cup slightly, buying time. My mind was racing. Why would Martha say that? Why now? I glanced back at her. She looked terrified. Not worried. Terrified. And then she mouthed something. "Please." That was enough. I placed the cup back on the table. "I think I'll let it cool," I said. Emily's smile didn't disappear. But it changed. Just a little. A flicker. Almost like disappointment. Or annoyance. "You always drink it hot," she said lightly. I shrugged. Getting old. A small chuckle moved around the table, but the tension didn't break. It grew. Daniel leaned forward. "Dad, about the documents." I barely heard him. Because now I wasn't thinking about the business. I was thinking about that cup. And the woman who handed it to me. And the maid who risked everything to warn me. "Let's talk in my office," I said suddenly, standing up. Daniel frowned. "Why, we can." "Office," I repeated. Firm. Final. He hesitated, then nodded. We both stood. As I walked past Martha, I slowed just enough. Without looking at her, I whispered, "What's in it?" Her voice was barely audible. I saw her in the kitchen, she added something. My chest tightened. "What?" "I don't know," but she looked around first, like she didn't want anyone to see. I kept walking. Didn't react. But inside, something cracked. Inside my office, Daniel closed the door behind him. "Dad, what's going on?" he asked. "You're acting strange." I turned to him. studied his face. My son. The boy I raised. The man sitting across from me now. Do you trust your wife? I asked. He blinked. What? Answer me. Of course I do. What kind of question is that? I nodded slowly. Good, I said. Because what I'm about to say is going to test that trust. And for the first time that morning, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. Outside that door at that table sat a cup of coffee that might have been nothing, or might have been everything, and I was about to find out which one it was. I closed the office door slowly, making sure it clicked shut, then turned back to Daniel and let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. Dad, you're scaring me, he said, his voice lower now, less confident. Good. He needed to feel something. Your wife handed me a cup of coffee, I said carefully, watching his face. And Martha just told me not to drink it. He stared at me like I had just said something absurd. What? He laughed lightly, shaking his head. Dad, come on, Martha. She probably misunderstood something. She said she saw Emily add something to it. That did it. The laugh disappeared. Not completely, but enough. A crack. That's ridiculous, Daniel said, but now there was tension in his jaw. Emily wouldn't. Why would she? This doesn't even make sense. Exactly, I said quietly. It doesn't. I stepped closer to him. But you tell me something, Daniel. When something doesn't make sense, do you ignore it, or do you look closer? He didn't answer immediately, and that silence told me more than anything he could have said. I walked past him and opened the door again. Come on, I said. Let's not jump to conclusions. We walked back into the dining room. Everyone looked up immediately. Emily's eyes went straight to me, then to my hands. The cup was still sitting where I left it, untouched. Her smile returned, but it was thinner now, sharper. Everything okay? She asked. Perfect, I said calmly, pulling my chair back and sitting down. I reached for the cup again, slowly, deliberately. This time, I felt every pair of eyes in the room on me. Sarah leaned forward slightly, curious. Daniel sat beside me, tense, watching both me and Emily like he was trying to read something invisible between us. And Martha. She had stopped pretending to work. She was frozen. I lifted the cup, brought it closer, closer. I could smell the coffee now. Normal. Rich. Nothing unusual. But something inside me refused to ignore that whisper. Don't drink it. Trust me. I paused just before it touched my lips. Then I stopped. Again. Emily let out a soft breath. Almost inaudible, but I caught it. Annoyance. Dad, Daniel said, forcing a smile. You're really dragging this out. I looked at him. Then at Emily. Then back at the cup. And suddenly I smiled. You're right, I said. Let's not waste good coffee. And then, instead of drinking it, I stood up, walked over to the indoor plant near the window, and poured the entire cup into the soil. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. What are you doing? Sarah asked, confused. I placed the empty cup down beside the plant and turned around. Testing something, I said calmly. Emily stood up now. Too quickly. That's ridiculous, she said, her voice tight. Why would you? Sit down, I said. Not loud. Not aggressive. But final. She froze. For a second, just a second, something flashed across her face. Not anger. Not confusion. Fear. Then it vanished. She slowly sat back down. Daniel was staring at me now, completely serious. No one leaves this room, I said. Dad. No one, I repeated. Minutes passed. Long, suffocating minutes. At first, nothing happened. And for a brief second, I wondered if I had just destroyed my own family over paranoia. If Martha had misunderstood. If I had just accused my daughter-in-law of something unthinkable, over nothing. Then Sarah spoke. Dad, this is... And then she stopped. Wait, what is that? We all turned. The plant. The leaves were drooping. Not slowly. Rapidly. Right in front of us. A dark stain spread through the soil, and the edges of the leaves began to curl inward like they were being burned from the inside. Within seconds, the vibrant green turned. Lifeless. Dead. The room went completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Daniel stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I was looking at Emily, and she was no longer pretending. Her face had gone pale, her lips slightly parted, her eyes darting, calculating, searching. "Emily," Daniel said slowly, his voice shaking now. "What is going on?" She looked at him, and for the first time since she entered our lives, she didn't have an answer ready. She started, but nothing came out. I stepped forward. "One question," I said quietly, "and I want the truth." She swallowed. "Did you put something in my coffee?" Silence. Thick. Unbearable. Then, "No," she said. Too fast. Too sharp. Too rehearsed. I nodded slowly. "Okay," I said. Then I turned to Martha. "Martha," I said gently, "tell everyone what you saw." Martha hesitated, her hands trembling, but then she stepped forward. I was in the kitchen," she said, her voice shaking. She didn't know I was there. I saw her take a small bottle from her bag and pour something into his cup. Gasps filled the room. Daniel turned to Emily again. "Tell me she's lying," he said. Emily's breathing quickened. It's not what you think." "What is it then?" he snapped. She looked at me. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. She wasn't scared of being caught. She was scared that it hadn't worked. "You weren't supposed to pour it out," she said quietly. The room froze again. Daniel blinked. "What?" Her eyes stayed on me. Cold now. Empty. "You were supposed to drink it." And just like that, everything changed. The room. The family. "Why?" I asked. Simple. Direct. Her lips curled slightly. Not into a smile. Something darker. "Because you were never going to give him the company," she said. Daniel stepped back like he'd been hit. "What are you talking about?" he said. She finally turned to him. "You think I didn't know?" she said. "You think I didn't see the revised will, the clauses, the delays? He was stalling you, Daniel, stringing you along." "That's not," he started. "It is," I cut in. Both of them looked at me. "Yes," I said. "I was delaying." Daniel's face twisted. "Why?" "Because I wasn't sure you were ready," I said. "And because I wasn't sure about her." Silence again. Emily laughed softly. "There it is," she said. "The truth. You tried to kill me over that." I asked. Her eyes snapped back to mine. "Don't make it sound so dramatic," she said coldly. "It wasn't supposed to be painful." My blood ran cold. Daniel looked like he couldn't breathe. You planned this," he whispered. She didn't answer. And that was answer enough. I walked to my desk drawer nearby and pulled out my phone. Emily noticed. "What are you doing?" she asked. I looked at her. And for the first time, I let her see exactly what I was thinking. "I'm ending this," I said. And I pressed the call button. Because this wasn't just a family matter anymore. This was something else entirely. And there was no going back. The phone rang once. Twice. No one in the room moved. I didn't take my eyes off Emily. By the third ring, someone picked up. 911, what's your emergency?" "My name is Robert Hale," I said calmly. "I believe someone just attempted to poison me." A sharp inhale came from Sarah. Daniel stumbled back, running both hands through his hair like he was trying to wake himself up from a nightmare. Emily didn't react the way a guilty person usually does. She didn't panic. She didn't cry. She just stared at me. Cold. Focused. Calculating. "Sir, are you in immediate danger?" the operator asked. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "But I need officers here now." I gave them the address. Ended the call. And the silence that followed was heavier than anything before it. "You called the police?" Daniel said, almost whispering, like saying it louder would make it more real. "Yes," I said. "You didn't have to do that," Emily said suddenly. Her voice was calm again. Too calm. I turned to her slowly. "Didn't I?" She stood up. Slow. Controlled. "You're making a mistake," she said. No, I replied. I already made one. Her eyes narrowed slightly. And what was that? Letting you into my family. That landed. For the first time, it hit her. Not as anger, but as something deeper. Something personal. Daniel looked between us like he was watching two strangers. No, this can't be real, he muttered. Emily, just tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding, please. She looked at him. And for a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not guilt. Not remorse. Something closer to conflict. Like two versions of her were fighting. I did it for us, she said softly. Daniel froze. For us, he repeated. You were never going to get what you deserved, she said, stepping toward him. Your whole life he controlled everything, every decision, every opportunity, and you just accepted it. That's not true. It is, she snapped, her voice rising for the first time. You waited, you obeyed. You hoped he'd finally hand it all over like some reward. She turned to me. And he never was. I was protecting him, I said. From what? She shot back. From becoming someone like you. That silence again. Sharp. Cutting. Daniel stepped back, shaking his head. Stop, both of you. Just stop. He looked at Emily. Tell me exactly what you put in that coffee. Her lips parted. Closed. Then she exhaled slowly. Something that would stop his heart, she said. Sarah let out a sob. Daniel's face went completely blank. Like his mind had just shut down to protect itself. You're talking about killing him, he said. I'm talking about freeing you, she replied. By murdering my father. She didn't answer. Because there was no version of this where that sounded right. In the distance, faint at first. Sirens. Emily heard them too. Her posture shifted. Just slightly. And that's when I knew. She was thinking about leaving. You're not going anywhere, I said. She looked at me. Then at the door. Then back at me. You think I'm stupid? She asked quietly. No, I said. I think you're desperate. Her jaw tightened. Emily, Daniel said, his voice breaking now. Please, don't make this worse. She looked at him again. Really looked at him. And for a moment, everything else disappeared. It was just them. I did everything for you, she said. I never asked for this, he replied. That was the moment. The exact moment something inside her cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough for the mask to slip completely. And what was underneath wasn't love. It wasn't even anger. It was emptiness. You would have thanked me later, she said. No, Daniel said, his voice firm now despite the tears in his eyes. I would have hated you for the rest of my life. That hit harder than anything else. She stepped back, like he had physically pushed her. The sirens grew louder, closer. And now, there was no time left. Emily glanced around the room one last time. At the table. At the cup. At the plant, now completely lifeless. At Martha, who couldn't even look at her. And finally, at me. You should have just drunk it, she said quietly. I didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to say. Moments later, the front door burst open. Officers flooded in. Commands. Movement. Tension snapping like a wire pulled too tight. Emily didn't resist. She didn't fight. She didn't even look surprised. As they cuffed her, she kept her eyes on Daniel. Only him. And he couldn't meet her gaze. Not anymore. They led her away. Just like that. Gone. And with her. Whatever version of our family we thought we had. The house felt different. Empty. Not quiet, but hollow. Like something had been ripped out from the inside. Daniel sank into a chair, staring at nothing. Sarah sat beside him, holding his arm, but even she didn't know what to say. Martha stood near the wall, still shaking. I walked slowly back to the table. Picked up the empty cup. Turned it in my hands. Such a small thing. Such a simple moment. And it almost ended everything. I looked at Martha. You saved my life, I said. Tears filled her eyes. I just couldn't stay quiet. I nodded. And for the first time that day, I allowed myself to feel it. The weight of how close it all came. How one decision, one sip, would have changed everything. I looked at Daniel. My decision about the company. I started. He shook his head immediately. Not now, he said quietly. Please, not now. I understood. This wasn't about business anymore. This was about something much deeper. Trust. Family. And the realization that sometimes the danger doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people sitting right across from you. Smiling. Waiting for you to take a sip. The police cars were gone within the hour. The flashing lights disappeared first, then the noise, then the last trace of normalcy we had left. What remained was something heavier. Something that doesn't leave with sirens. Daniel didn't move from that chair for a long time. Not even when Sarah tried to get him to stand. Not even when Martha quietly asked if she should clean up. He just sat there, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like the answers might crawl out from between the tiles. I had seen him hurt before. When he was a kid, when he lost his first big client, when his mother passed. But this was different. This wasn't pain. This was collapse. Daniel, I said gently. No response. I walked closer. Put a hand on his shoulder. He flinched. Not away from me. Just at the touch. I need some air, he muttered, finally standing up. His voice sounded hollow. Like it didn't belong to him. I'll come with you, Sarah said quickly. No, he said. Alone. He walked out without looking back. The front door closed softly behind him. And just like that, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Fear. Not of Emily. Not of what almost happened. But of what might happen next. Because sometimes, the aftermath is worse than the event itself. Sarah exhaled shakily and leaned against the table. I don't understand, she whispered. How did we not see this? I didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was, we did see things. Small things. Moments. Looks. Comments that felt off but were easy to ignore. She was careful, I said finally. People like her, they don't show everything at once. Martha stepped forward slowly. I noticed things, she said hesitantly. We both turned to her. What things? I asked. She clasped her hands tightly. Sometimes when no one was around, her face would change, she said. Like she was someone else, colder. A chill ran through me. And she asked questions, Martha continued. About your medication, your schedule, when you were alone. Sarah's eyes widened. Why didn't you say anything? Martha looked down. I wasn't sure, she whispered. And I didn't want to accuse her without proof. I nodded slowly. You did the right thing, I said. When it mattered. She gave a small, shaky nod. That's when the front door opened again. Daniel. He stepped back inside. But something about him was different. Not calmer. Not better. Just decided. He looked at me. Did you know? He asked. The question hit harder than anything else today. No, I said immediately. He held my gaze. Searching. You suspected her, he said. Yes. But you didn't tell me. I didn't have proof. His jaw tightened. So you just waited. I watched, I said. There's a difference. He let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, there is. Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Complicated. You thought I couldn't handle it, he said. No, I replied. I thought you wouldn't believe it. That landed. Because it was true. He ran a hand through his hair again. She said you were holding me back, he muttered. That you didn't trust me, that you were going to give everything to Sarah instead. Sarah blinked. What, that's insane. I never said that, I cut in. I know that now, Daniel snapped. But she made it sound real. She showed me things, documents, emails. My stomach dropped. What documents? He hesitated. Drafts, he said. Legal drafts, changes to the will, notes in your handwriting. I went completely still. Show me, I said. He pulled out his phone. Opened a folder. Handed it to me. I scrolled. And felt something cold settle in my chest. They looked real. Too real. My handwriting. My signature style. But the content. It wasn't mine. These are fake, I said quietly. Daniel stared at me. She forged them, I continued. Or had someone do it. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. That's next level. Daniel sank back into the chair. She made me believe you didn't trust me, he said. That you were slowly cutting me out. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time today, I saw it clearly. This wasn't just about money. This was about something deeper. Doubt. Ego. Fear. She didn't create that feeling, I said. She used it. He didn't argue. Because he knew. I should have talked to you, he admitted quietly. Yes, I said. You should have. Another silence. But this one felt different. Less sharp. More honest. What happens now? Sarah asked softly. I exhaled slowly. Now we fix what we can. Daniel looked up. And what if we can't? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. Because some things don't go back to the way they were. But that doesn't mean they stay broken. We start with the truth, I said finally. And then we rebuild. He held my gaze. And after a long moment, he nodded. Not fully convinced. Not fully healed. But willing. And sometimes that's enough. Days passed. Then weeks. The house slowly returned to something that resembled normal. But it wasn't the same. It couldn't be. Emily's trial moved fast. Too much evidence. The substance. The attempt. Martha's testimony. My statement. Daniel didn't attend the first hearing. Or the second. But on the third. He showed up. I sat beside him in the courtroom. Neither of us spoke as she was brought in. Emily looked different. Not weaker. Not broken. Just exposed. Like someone had finally turned the lights on. Her eyes scanned the room. Until they found Daniel. They held there. For a long time. The judge spoke. The lawyers argued. Words like premeditated and intent filled it. But none of it mattered as much as that one look between them. Because whatever she had done, whatever she had planned, a part of her had been real. And losing that was its own kind of punishment. When it was over. When the decision was made. Daniel didn't react. Not immediately. He just sat there. Quiet. Still. Then he stood up. And walked out. I followed him. Not too close. Not too far. Outside he stopped. Took a deep breath. She almost killed you, he said. Yes. And I almost helped her. I didn't respond. Because he needed to say it. I believed her, he continued. I doubted you. That's over now, I said. He shook his head. No, it's not, but I'm going to fix it. I studied him. How? He looked at me. Clear. Focused. By becoming someone you don't have to question. For the first time in a long time. I felt something solid again. Not certainty. Not control. But hope. I nodded. Then start today. He gave a small, tired smile. Yeah, he said. Today. We stood there for a moment. Side by side. Not perfect. Not whole. But still standing. And sometimes, after everything falls apart, that's where real strength begins. Life didn't snap back into place after that day. It shifted. Quietly. Permanently. You don't come that close to death, and then just go back to morning coffee and business meetings like nothing happened. Every small thing starts to feel louder. Heavier. More real. For weeks, I couldn't pick up a cup without thinking about it. Not just the poison. The moment. The choice. How thin the line was between everything continuing and everything ending. Daniel changed too. Not overnight. Not dramatically. But in ways that mattered. He started coming in earlier to the office. Stayed later. Asked questions he should have asked years ago. Not the surface-level kind, the uncomfortable ones. The kind that expose gaps. Weaknesses. The kind that build something real. And for the first time, he listened. Not like a son trying to prove himself, but like a man trying to understand. We argued more. But they were different arguments. Cleaner. Honest. No hidden resentment sitting underneath every word. One evening, about a month after the trial started, he walked into my office and closed the door behind him. That alone told me it was serious. I went through everything, he said. What everything? I asked. The company, the finances, the expansion plans, all of it. I leaned back slightly. And he exhaled. You were right. I didn't say anything. Not because I wanted to hold it over him, but because I wanted him to finish. I wasn't ready, he said. Not fully, I thought I was, but I wasn't seeing the risks, the long-term impact. I was focused on growth, not stability. I nodded slowly. That's normal, I said. Ambition without experience usually looks like confidence. He gave a faint smile. Yeah, I had a lot of that. Silence settled for a moment. Then he stepped closer to the desk. But I'm not that guy anymore, he said. I looked up at him. There was no arrogance in his face. No defensiveness. Just clarity. I know, I said. That surprised him. You do. I see it, I replied. In how you talk, in what you notice, in what you question. He absorbed that quietly, then nodded once. I don't want it handed to me anymore, he said. The company. That caught me off guard. I want to earn it, he continued. Piece by piece, responsibility by responsibility, no shortcuts. I studied him for a long moment. Because this was the version of him I had been waiting for. Not perfect, but grounded. You'll get your chance, I said. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He just nodded again, and walked out. That was the moment I knew something had shifted for good. Not because he said the right thing, but because he meant it. Months passed. The trial ended. Emily was sentenced. The details didn't matter as much as the reality of it. She was gone. Not just physically, but from our lives completely. No calls. No letters. No attempts to reach out. Just silence. And somehow, that silence said more than anything she ever could have. Sarah moved on in her own way. She threw herself into her work, her friends, anything that kept her mind from circling back to that day. But sometimes, I'd catch her staring at the dining table. At that spot, where everything changed. And I knew. Some images don't fade. Martha stayed. Of course she did. But things between us changed too. Not awkward. Not distant. Stronger. More respectful. Because she wasn't just part of the household anymore. She was part of the reason I was still alive. One morning I found her in the kitchen making coffee. I paused at the doorway. She noticed immediately. And for a split second I saw it. That same fear. That same hesitation. Like she was worried I wouldn't trust it. Or her. I walked in slowly. Took the cup from the counter. And drank it. Without hesitation. Her eyes widened slightly. Then softened. Thank you, she said quietly. I nodded. Trust goes both ways, I replied. And that moment, simple as it was, meant more than anything else we had said since that day. But the real turning point came later. Much later. It was a quiet evening. Just me and Daniel. We were sitting in the same dining room. Same table. Same seats. The house was calm. Peaceful. For the first time in a long time. He looked at the empty spot where Emily used to sit. Then at me. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you drank it? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. Because of course I had. More times than I could count. Yeah, I said finally. I do. And, he asked. I met his eyes. You would have lost more than just me. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? I leaned forward just a bit. You would have lost yourself, I said. He held my gaze. And slowly. He nodded. Because deep down. He already knew. Silence settled between us. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It was steady. Grounded. I'm glad you didn't drink it, he said quietly. I allowed myself a small smile. Me too. He let out a breath. Then leaned back in his chair. I almost destroyed everything, he admitted. No, I said. You almost lost everything. He looked at me, confused. There's a difference, I continued. One comes from intention, the other from influence. He thought about that. Long and hard. And then. He nodded again. And in that moment. I saw it. Not the boy I raised. Not the man who almost made a terrible mistake. But the man he had become because of it. Stronger. Wiser. Sharper. The kind of man who doesn't just inherit something, but protects it. Builds it. Understands its value. I looked down at the table. At the space where that cup once sat. And I realized something. That moment didn't destroy us. It revealed us. Every weakness. Every doubt. Every hidden crack. And then, it forced us to face them. Together. Or not at all. I looked back at Daniel. And for the first time in years, there was no doubt in my mind. He was ready. Not because of what he knew, but because of what he had survived. Because sometimes, the people who come closest to losing everything are the ones who learn exactly how to keep it. Time has a strange way of testing whether change is real or just a reaction to shock. Weeks can lie. Months can pretend. But a year tells the truth. And a year later, I finally had mine. It started quietly. No announcement. No big moment. Just a pattern I couldn't ignore anymore. Daniel wasn't just improving. He was leading. Not loudly. Not aggressively. But consistently. He made decisions I would have made. Asked questions I hadn't even considered. And more importantly, he knew when not to act. That was new. One afternoon, I sat in the conference room while he handled a negotiation I normally would have taken myself. I didn't interrupt. Didn't guide. I just watched. And I saw it happen. A client pushed too hard. Old Daniel would have pushed back harder, tried to win the moment. This Daniel. He leaned back. Stayed calm. Let the silence do the work. And then he walked away from the deal. Just like that. No hesitation. No panic. Later in my office, I asked him why. It wasn't right, he said simply. Explain, I told him. The short-term gain wasn't worth the long-term risk, he replied. And they knew it. They were testing whether I'd fold. I nodded slowly. And did you? He shook his head. No. That was it. No over-explanation. No need for validation. Just certainty. That night I made a decision. Not emotional. Not reactive. Earned. The next morning I called for a family meeting. Same room. Same table. But this time, no tension. No fear. Just clarity. Daniel walked in first. Then Sarah. Martha stood quietly near the back like always. I placed a folder on the table. Right in front of Daniel. He looked at it. Then at me. What's this? He asked. Open it, I said. He did. Slowly. Carefully. As he read, his expression didn't explode into excitement. Didn't shift into disbelief. It settled. Deepened. You're serious? He asked. Yes. Sarah leaned forward. What is it? He looked at her. Then back at me. You're transferring executive control, he said. Effective immediately, I replied. Silence. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was full. You said you wanted to earn it, I continued. You have. He closed the folder gently. Not rushed. Not overwhelmed. Just present. I'm not you, he said. I don't want you to be, I replied. Another pause. Then he nodded. Okay. That was it. No dramatic speech. No emotional breakdown. Just acceptance of responsibility. Real responsibility. And that's when I knew. This wasn't a risk anymore. It was the right move. After the meeting, Sarah pulled me aside. You trust him now, she said. It wasn't a question. No, I said. She blinked. What? I don't trust him, I clarified. I believe in him. She frowned slightly. What's the difference? I looked back toward the dining room, where Daniel was still standing, reading through the documents again. Trust can be broken, I said. Belief is built. She followed my gaze. And slowly, she smiled. Life moved forward after that. Not perfectly. Not without challenges. But forward. Daniel took control of the company and proved, day by day, that the position wasn't just given to him. It was his. Sarah found her own path, one that didn't revolve around the family business, but still kept her close to it. Martha. She stayed exactly where she had always been. But now, when she walked through the house, it felt different. Like she wasn't just part of the background anymore. She was part of the foundation. And me. I stepped back. Not completely, but enough. Enough to see everything from a distance. Enough to breathe. Enough to realize something I hadn't understood before. Control isn't the same as protection. And holding on too tightly can sometimes create the very thing you're trying to prevent. One evening, months later, I sat alone in the dining room again. The house was quiet, peaceful. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat down, and just looked at it. Same color, same smell, same simplicity. But it would never just be coffee again. Not after that day. Not after that choice. I picked it up, took a sip, calm, steady, no hesitation. And as I set it back down, I realized something. That moment didn't define my life. It didn't end it. It didn't even break it. It revealed it. The truth about the people around me. The truth about my family. And the truth about myself. Because in the end, it wasn't the poison that almost destroyed everything. It was the doubt, the silence, the things left unsaid. And once those were gone, there was nothing left to hide behind. Nothing left to fear. Just truth. And sometimes, that's the only thing strong enough to rebuild everything. Peace doesn't arrive all at once. It settles in slowly, like dust after a storm. And just when you start believing everything has finally calmed down, life finds a way to test you again. It had been almost 18 months. Long enough for routines to feel normal again. Long enough for the house to stop echoing with that day. Long enough for Daniel to become undeniable in his role. He wasn't filling my shoes anymore. He had built his own. Different style. Different instincts. But strong. Stronger than I expected, if I'm being honest. That evening, I was in my study when I heard the front gate open. Unusual. Daniel had a key. So did Sarah. They never used the gate bell. I stepped out into the hallway listening. Voices. Low. Unfamiliar. By the time I reached the living room, Daniel was already there. Standing still. Frozen in a way I hadn't seen since that day. And across from him was a man I had never seen before. Mid-40s. Sharp suit. Sharp eyes. The kind of man who observes more than he speaks. And beside him, a woman. Younger. Late 20s maybe. Holding a folder tightly against her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her steady. "Can I help you?" I asked, stepping forward. The man turned to me. Polite smile. Controlled. "I believe you can, Mr. Hale," he said. Something about his tone didn't sit right. "This is private property," I said calmly. "You don't just walk in." "I understand," he replied. But this couldn't wait. Daniel finally spoke. "I let them in," he said quietly. I looked at him. Then back at the man. "Who are you?" I asked. The man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a card. Handed it to me. I glanced down. Legal firm. High-end. Expensive. "I'm representing someone," he said. I didn't like where this was going. "Who?" I asked. He paused. Just slightly. Long enough to make it deliberate. "Emily Carter." The name hit the room like a dropped glass. Sharp. Loud. Impossible to ignore. Sarah had just walked in behind me. She stopped dead in her tracks. "No," she whispered. "No, she's in prison," the man finished calmly. "Yes." Silence. Heavy again. But different this time. Less fear. More anticipation. "And?" I said. He gestured toward the woman beside him. "This is Laura Bennett," he said. "She has something that concerns your family." The woman stepped forward, hands trembling slightly. But her eyes were determined. "I didn't know if I should come," she said softly. But after everything that happened, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Something twisted in my gut. That feeling again. The one that starts low and rises fast. What is this about? Daniel asked, his voice tight. She looked at him, then at me, then slowly opened the folder. Inside. Documents. Photos. Records. She handed them to me. Emily wasn't working alone, she said. The room went still. Again. But this time, it wasn't shock. It was realization. I looked down at the first page. Bank transfers. Large ones. Structured. Careful. Hidden. My name wasn't on them. Daniel's wasn't either. But the company's was. What is this? I asked, my voice lower now. She was being funded, Laura said. And guided. By who? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Laura hesitated, then said it. My father. Silence. Complete. Absolute. I felt something cold spread through my chest. And who is your father? I asked slowly. She swallowed, then looked me directly in the eyes. Richard Bennett. The name landed heavier than anything else. Because I knew it. Very well. Old business rival. Someone who had tried to undercut me years ago. Failed. Disappeared. Or so I thought. Daniel stepped back. No, that's not possible, he said. That was years ago. He never forgot, Laura said. He just waited. My grip tightened on the papers. And Emily? I asked. She met him 2 years before she met Daniel, Laura said. Every piece started clicking into place. Too neatly. Too perfectly. She wasn't just your daughter-in-law, Laura continued. She was an opportunity. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were closing in. All this time. Sarah whispered. Yes, Laura said. All this time. I looked at Daniel. And I saw it again. That same look from before. Not confusion. Not disbelief. Recognition. Because now, everything made sense. The manipulation. The forged documents. The pressure. The timing. It wasn't random. It was designed. Carefully. Patiently. You're saying this was planned? I asked. From the beginning, Laura replied. And why are you telling us this now? I said. Her expression shifted. Pain. Guilt. I found out the truth recently, she said. About what he was doing, about Emily, about everything. And you decided to betray your father. I asked. She nodded. Yes. Why? Her voice cracked slightly. Because someone almost died. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was sharp. Focused. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. I slowly set the papers down on the table. Looked at Daniel. Then at Sarah. Then back at Laura. And finally, at the man representing Emily. You came here for a reason, I said. The lawyer gave a small nod. Yes. What is it? He met my eyes. Emily is willing to testify, he said. Against Richard Bennett. The room didn't explode. It didn't react. Because we all understood what that meant. This wasn't just about our family anymore. This was bigger, darker, and far from finished. I took a slow breath, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not fear. Not uncertainty. Something else. Resolve. Because whoever thought this was over had just made a very serious mistake. For a long moment no one spoke. Not because there was nothing to say, but because every word now carried weight. Different weight. This wasn't family tension anymore. This was war. Quiet. Calculated. Long buried. I looked down at the documents again, then back at the lawyer. What does she want? I asked. Because people like Emily don't just offer something like this for free. The lawyer didn't hesitate. Protection, he said. And a reduced sentence. Of course. I gave a small nod, more to myself than to anyone else. And in return, I said, she gives us Richard Bennett. Not just him, Laura said quickly. Everything, the accounts, the contacts, the way he operates. She knows things that could put him away for good. I studied her face. She wasn't lying. Or if she was, she believed what she was saying. Why come to us? Sarah asked. Why not go straight to the police? The lawyer answered this time. Because this started with your family, he said. And because Mr. Hale is one of the few people who understands exactly who Richard Bennett is, and what he's capable of. That part was true. Too true. I leaned back slightly, thinking. Richard Bennett. A man who didn't just compete. He dismantled. Slowly. Patiently. He didn't come at you directly. He built a path around you until there was nowhere left to stand. And now, I was seeing the full shape of it. Emily wasn't the beginning. She was the move. A long, strategic move. Say we agree, I said. What happens next? The lawyer adjusted his cuff slightly. We arrange a formal statement, he said. Recorded, documented, legally binding. Then we coordinate with federal authorities. Daniel finally stepped forward again. And you expect us to just trust her? He asked. There was anger in his voice now. Controlled. But very real. No, Laura said softly. You don't have to trust her. She took a breath. But you should listen to her. Daniel looked at her, jaw tight. She tried to kill my father. I know, she said. And I'm not asking you to forgive her. Her voice steadied. I'm asking you to stop someone worse. That hung in there. Because deep down, we all knew it was true. I stood up slowly. Walked a few steps toward the window. Looked out at the driveway. At the gate. The same place where this all started, again. And I realized something. This wasn't a coincidence. This was timing. Careful. Intentional. Which meant Richard Bennett knew something. Or at least suspected something. I turned back around. If we do this, I said, we do it properly. The lawyer nodded. Of course. No shortcuts, I continued. No assumptions. I want everything verified before a single step is taken. Agreed. I looked at Daniel. Then at Sarah. Neither of them spoke. But I could see it. They were with me. Not blindly. Not emotionally. But knowingly. Set it up, I said. The lawyer gave a small, satisfied nod. We'll be in touch within 24 hours. He turned to Lee. Laura hesitated for a moment, then stepped closer to me. I know I don't have the right to ask this, she said quietly. But be careful. I held her gaze. I always am, I replied. She shook her head slightly. No, she said. Not like this. Something in her tone. Made me listen. He doesn't rush, she continued. He doesn't panic. If he thinks something is slipping, he adapts. I felt that cold edge again. The one I hadn't felt in years. And how do you know that? I asked. Her answer was immediate. Because I grew up watching him do it. Silence. Then she stepped back. And followed the lawyer out. The door closed. And just like that. It was just us again. But nothing felt the same. Daniel ran a hand over his face. This isn't over, he said. No, I replied. It's just beginning. Sarah crossed her arms, pacing slightly. So what do we do now? I looked at both of them. And for the first time in a long time. I didn't feel like I was carrying everything alone. We prepare, I said. For what? Daniel asked. For the part where he realizes his plan failed. Silence. Because that part was the most dangerous. Days passed quickly after that. Too quickly. Meetings were arranged. Lawyers. Advisors. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly became very relevant again. We moved carefully. Quietly. No unnecessary attention. No loose ends. And then. The day came. We were in a secured conference room. Not at the house. Not at the office. Neutral ground. Emily was brought in under supervision. The moment she walked in, time didn't slow down. It sharpened. She looked at me first, then at Daniel. And for a split second, there it was again. That flicker. Not the same as before. Not control. Not calculation. Something closer to awareness. Like she understood exactly where she stood now. Robert, she said. I didn't respond. Daniel, she added. He didn't respond. Good. This wasn't personal anymore. This was business. Serious business. The lawyer began. Recording devices were placed. Statements were outlined. And then, Emily started talking. Names, dates, accounts, connections, layer after layer. And with every word, the picture became clearer, bigger, darker. Richard Bennett hadn't just been targeting me. He had been building something, using multiple fronts, multiple people. Emily was just one of them. A key one, but not the only one. When she finished, the room was silent, not stunned, not shocked, just focused, because now we knew. And knowing changes everything. I stood up slowly, looked at her one last time. You chose the wrong side, I said. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself. She just nodded. I know, she said quietly. And for the first time, I believed her. But it didn't change anything. Because some choices don't come with second chances, only consequences. We walked out of that room with everything we needed. Evidence, leverage, truth. And as we stepped into the hallway, Daniel walked beside me. Not behind, not ahead, beside. Now what? He asked. I looked straight ahead, and felt that same resolve settle in again. Now, I said, we finish what he started. Because this time, we weren't reacting. We were ready. Preparation changes the way fear feels. It doesn't remove it, it reshapes it. Turns it from something that freezes you into something that sharpens you. That's where we were now. Not safe, not comfortable, but ready. Days turned into a rhythm of controlled movement. Meetings that never happened in the same place twice. Calls that were never made from the same number. Files reviewed, cross-checked, verified again and again. Every piece Emily gave us was tested. Nothing assumed. Nothing trusted without proof. And the more we verified, the worse it got. Richard Bennett wasn't just running a quiet revenge plan. He had built an entire network. Shell companies feeding into each other. Investments designed to look legitimate, but structured to siphon control. People placed in strategic positions, not just around me, but around other targets too. This wasn't personal anymore. It never was. I was just one of many. That realization changed something inside me. Because if this had succeeded, if I had taken that sip, it wouldn't have just been the end of me. It would have been the beginning of something much bigger. Daniel saw it too. One night, we were sitting in the office going through another stack of documents when he leaned back and exhaled slowly. He's not just trying to win, he said. He's trying to replace. I looked up. Exactly, I said. And Emily, he asked. A tool, I replied. A very effective one. Silence. Then he nodded. Not anymore. That was the difference now. Before, Daniel reacted. Now he understood. And that understanding made him dangerous in a way Richard Bennett wouldn't expect. The breakthrough came 3 days later. Not from a major discovery, but from a small detail. A name that didn't quite fit. Buried inside a list of transactions. Repeated. Subtle. Almost invisible. But consistent. Martha found it. Of all people. She had been helping organize the documents, quietly, methodically. And then she stopped. This one, she said, pointing. I walked over. Looked. And felt that familiar shift in my chest. Good catch, I said. Daniel leaned in. What is it? A connection point, I replied. Something he didn't expect anyone to notice. That name led to an account. That account led to a property. And that property led to him. Not directly. Not obviously. But enough. Enough to move. The next step wasn't ours alone. Authorities got involved. Properly this time. Not quietly. Not indirectly, but officially. And once that machine starts moving, it doesn't stop easily. Surveillance, tracking, pressure applied in places he couldn't ignore. And just like Laura warned, he adapted. Quickly. Accounts started shifting. People disappearing. Routes closing. But it was too late. Because this time, we weren't chasing him. We were ahead of him. The day it happened. Didn't feel dramatic. There was no countdown, No warning. Just a call. Short. Direct. It's done. That was all they said. I didn't ask for details immediately. I already knew what it meant. Daniel was in the room when I hung up. He looked at me. "Is it over?" he asked. I held his gaze. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself breathe. "Yes," I said. But even as I said it, I knew something important. Things like this don't end with a moment. They end with a process. Arrests were made. Evidence was secured. Names came out. More than we expected. More than we were ready for. And slowly, the structure he had built started collapsing. Not all at once, but piece by piece, like it had been built. Carefully. Patiently. And now, undone the same way. Weeks later, I sat in my office again. Same chair. Same desk. But everything felt different. Lighter. Not because nothing could go wrong anymore, but because we had faced something real. And come out the other side. Daniel walked in without knocking. Something he never used to do. "Thought you'd be here," he said. "I usually am," I replied. He stepped in, closed the door behind him. "It's finalized," he said. "All of it." I nodded. No need to ask what he meant. "Good," I said. He leaned against the desk slightly. "Strange," he added. "What is?" "How something that big ends so quietly." I gave a small, knowing look. "They always do," I said. "The loud part is just the beginning." He thought about that, then nodded. "I keep thinking about that day," he said. "The coffee. Yea. Silence. Not uncomfortable. Just reflective. If Martha hadn't said anything," he started. "But she did," I finished. He looked at me. And there was something steady in his expression now. Something that hadn't been there before. "I won't forget that," he said. "Don't," I replied. "Moments like that, they matter." He straightened slightly. "I've been thinking," he said. "That's usually a good sign," I replied. A small smile. Brief. Then gone. "I want to bring Martha into the company," he said. That caught my attention. "Not as staff," he added quickly. "Something more, something real. She sees things, details others miss." I considered that. And then, I nodded. "That's a good decision," I said. He didn't look surprised. Just satisfied. "Thought you'd say that." He turned to leave. Then paused at the door. "Dad." "Yea." He hesitated for just a second. Then said it. "I'm glad you trusted that voice." I knew what he meant. Not mine. Martha's. The warning. The moment. "I'm glad I listened," I said. He nodded once. And walked out. I sat there for a while after he left. Quiet. Still. Then I reached for the coffee on my desk. Took a slow sip. No hesitation. No second thought. Just coffee. And as I set the cup down, I realized something. It was never about the poison. Not really. It was about the choice. To listen. To question. To trust the right voice at the right moment. Because sometimes, the smallest warning is the only thing standing between everything you have and everything you could lose. There's a strange kind of silence that comes after everything is over. Not the heavy silence we lived through before, not the kind filled with tension or unanswered questions. This one is different. It's earned. It's quiet because there's nothing left chasing you. Months passed after Richard Bennett's network collapsed. Not weeks. Months. Long enough for the news to fade. For the calls to stop. For the last legal threads to finally tie themselves off. And with every passing day, life became simpler again. Not easy, but clear. Daniel didn't just hold the company together, he transformed it. Not in ways that made headlines, but in ways that mattered. He cut ties with anything even remotely questionable. Strengthened internal controls. Brought in people who challenged him instead of agreeing with him. And Martha. He kept his word. He brought her in. Not as a token. Not as a gesture. But as someone whose instincts had already proven their value. She didn't sit in boardrooms pretending to be something she wasn't. She observed. Listened. Noticed what others missed. And more than once, Her quiet input prevented problems before they even had a chance to grow. Sarah found her own rhythm too. She stayed close but on her terms. No pressure. No expectations. Just connection. And it worked. Better than before. As for me, I let go. Not completely. But enough. Enough to finally understand something I had spent decades getting wrong. Control doesn't protect people. Trust does. One evening, almost 2 years after that day, we all found ourselves back at the same table. No meeting. No agenda. Just dinner. Daniel sat at the head now. Not because I gave him the seat, but because he had grown into it. Sarah was laughing about something I barely caught. Martha was moving between the kitchen and the table, more relaxed than I had ever seen her. And me. I was just there, present, watching it all, feeling it. The kind of moment you don't realize you've missed until you finally have it again. Dinner ended slowly. No one rushed. No one needed to. And eventually, one by one, they left the table. Until it was just me again. Same seat. Same room. Same quiet. I leaned back slightly and let my eyes fall to the center of the table. And there it was. A cup of coffee. Simple. Ordinary. Unremarkable. But not to me. Not ever again. I stared at it for a long moment. Not with fear. Not with doubt. But with understanding. Because that cup was never just about what was inside it. It was about what it revealed. About people. About trust. About the things we ignore until they become impossible to ignore. I reached for it. Slowly. Steadily. And for just a split second. I remembered that voice. Don't drink it, trust me. A whisper that changed everything. A moment that could have ended everything. But didn't. Because I listened. Because someone cared enough to speak. Because one small choice broke a chain of events that had been building for years. I took a sip. Calm. Normal. Exactly as it should be. And as I set the cup back down, I realized something I hadn't fully understood until now. That day didn't save my life. It gave me something else. Perspective. The kind you can't buy. The kind you can't teach. The kind you only earn when you come close enough to losing everything, to finally see what matters. I stood up slowly, turned off the lights, and walked toward the hallway. Halfway there, I paused, just for a moment, and looked back at the table one last time. At the empty chairs. At the quiet room. At the place where everything changed. And instead of tension, instead of fear, there was something else now. Peace. Not perfect. Not untouched. But real. And as I walked away, I didn't carry the weight of that day with me anymore. I carried what it left behind. Clarity. Because in the end, it was never about the coffee. It was about knowing who to trust when it matters most. And having the courage to listen.